There is a specific moment this type of person knows well. You are mid-sentence, about to say what you actually need, and then you stop. Not because you forgot, not because it stopped mattering, but because you read the room. You saw the tiredness in someone else's face, the tension in their shoulders, the slight shift in their expression. And in less than a second, your need quietly folded itself away. Most people would call you selfless, generous, thoughtful, and you have accepted those words for so long that you have almost started to believe them. But psychology tells a more complicated story, because there is a difference between choosing to give and being unable to stop, between genuine generosity and a pattern so deeply wired into you that saying no feels less like a preference and more like a threat. The real question, the one this video is actually about, is this. Is putting others first who you are, or is it what happened to you? And the final reason we will cover today is the one that reframes the answer entirely. Sign 1. You cannot say no without guilt. Most people who always put others first will tell you they simply hate letting people down. That sounds reasonable, even noble. But psychology draws a clear distinction between not wanting to disappoint someone and experiencing guilt as a physical response the moment you even consider saying no. Research on self-silencing behavior, developed by psychologist Dana Jack, found that people who chronically suppress their own needs do not experience saying no as a choice. They experience it as a violation, as if prioritizing themselves is, by definition, taking something from someone else. So the guilt is not a personality quirk, it is a signal. It tells you that somewhere along the way, your brain learned that your needs were the ones that could wait, that keeping others comfortable was not just kind, it was necessary. Sign 2. You monitor other people's moods constantly. You probably do not even notice you are doing it anymore. The slight edge in someone's voice, the pause before they answer, the expression that does not quite match the words. You register all of it, automatically, before a single word has been spoken. Psychologists call this hypervigilance to social cues, and it is one of the most consistent traits found in chronic people-pleasers. What looks like perceptiveness is often something else entirely. It is a nervous system that learned, early on, that reading the room was not optional. It was how you stayed safe. If you could sense the shift before it happened, you could adjust. You could smooth things over. You could prevent the storm. The problem is that a skill you develop to survive does not automatically switch off when you no longer need it to. So you are still scanning every room, every conversation, every relationship, not because you want to, but because some part of you still believes you have to. Sign 3. You shrink yourself in conflict. When disagreement appears, something happens to people like you. It is not that you do not have an opinion. You do. It is that the moment you sense tension rising, a different priority takes over. Keeping the peace, keeping the connection, keeping the other person from pulling away. And so your opinion quietly gets smaller. You soften it. You qualify it. You add, "but I could be wrong," to the end of a sentence you were completely certain about 30 seconds ago. Psychologist Thomas Gordon identified this as conflict aversion, rooted in attachment anxiety, a deep fear that disagreement equals disconnection, that if you hold your ground, you will lose the relationship. So you let it go, again and again, and each time you tell yourself it was not worth the argument. But the cost is not just the argument you avoided, it is the slow erosion of your own voice, until one day you reach for your opinion and find it harder to locate than it used to be. If you have made it this far and these signs are landing close to home, drop a comment with the number that feels most like you. I read every single one. Sign 4. You feel responsible for how other people feel. This is the one that exhausts you the most. Not just caring about the people in your life, feeling personally responsible for their emotional state. When someone in the room is unhappy, something in you registers it as your problem to fix. When someone is disappointed, part of you quietly assumes you are the cause. Psychologist Harriet Breaker, in her research on approval-seeking behavior, described this as emotional caretaking, a compulsive need to manage the feelings of others that goes far beyond empathy and becomes a kind of invisible labor that never fully clocks off. The cost is enormous. Because you cannot regulate your own emotional state while you are simultaneously trying to manage everyone else's, you end up carrying moods that were never yours to carry, and wondering, at the end of the day, why you feel so completely drained by a life that, from the outside, looks like it belongs to someone who has everything together. Sign 5. Your kindness has a root you have never fully examined. This is the sign that changes everything. Somewhere in your history, and for many people it begins in childhood, You learned that love was something you had to earn through usefulness, that the way to keep people close was to be indispensable to them, to need less, to give more, to make yourself easy. Psychologist Pete Walker, in his work on trauma and the nervous system, describes what he calls the fawn response, a survival strategy in which a person learns to prioritize others' needs as a way of avoiding conflict, rejection, or emotional withdrawal. It is not weakness. It was intelligence. It was a child finding the safest possible way through an environment where having needs felt dangerous. But here is what no one tells you. The strategy worked then, and it is costing you now, because you are still using a survival skill in a life that no longer requires surviving. Your generosity is real. Your care for the people around you is genuine. But generosity that comes without boundaries is not virtue. It is a wound still looking for a way to feel safe.
What is true about everything we covered today is that none of it makes you broken. It makes you someone who learned to love in the only language that felt available. And that is not something to be ashamed of. It is something to understand. Because understanding it is the first step to something different. Not becoming someone who cares less, but becoming someone who finally lets that same care extend, fully and without guilt, to themselves. If this video gave language to something you have carried quietly for a long time, leave a comment with the sign that felt most true, and share it with someone who might need to hear it today. I'm your host at ClarityWired. Subscribe so you do not miss the next one. Goodbye, and see you in the next video.